The wars that shaped our modern world. Level B. 2. Upper Intermediate. War has always been one of humanity's darkest inventions, yet, paradoxically, one of the strongest forces of change. From ancient battles with swords and shields to modern wars fought with drones and data, conflict has constantly reshaped the way we live, think, and build societies. The story of human progress cannot be told without the story of war, and understanding it means understanding ourselves. The Age of Kings and Empires. In the early centuries, wars were mostly about land, power, and control. Empires fought to expand, kings fought to survive, and soldiers fought because they had no choice. The Persian Wars in ancient Greece, for example, gave rise to the very idea of democracy, a society where people had a voice in choosing their destiny. When the Greeks united to resist a much stronger empire, they discovered the power of collective will, a concept that still defines nations today. Then came Rome, whose legions built one of the most powerful empires in history. The Roman wars didn't just create borders, they built roads, spread language, and influenced law, architecture, and culture across Europe. When Rome finally collapsed, it left behind a map of fragmented kingdoms and tribes, all fighting to control what was left of its greatness. The medieval world, faith, and fire. The Middle Ages brought a new kind of war, one driven not only by power but by belief. The Crusades, a series of religious wars between Christians and Muslims, lasted for centuries. They were brutal, tragic, and devastating. Yet they also opened trade routes, exchanged ideas, and connected distant cultures. From those exchanges came new knowledge, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy that helped spark the European Renaissance. In Asia, the Mongol conquests under Genghis Khan were equally transformative. His armies destroyed cities, but they also created the largest land empire the world has ever known. The Mongols' network connected east and west, allowing trade, ideas, and technology to move faster than ever before. Without it, the Silk Road might never have become the global artery of culture it was. The birth of nations. As centuries passed, wars became more organized and more ideological. The Age of Revolution changed everything. In the 18th century, the American Revolution and the French Revolution redefined the meaning of war. No longer was it just about kings and crowns, now it was about rights, liberty, and self-determination. The cry of freedom echoed around the world, inspiring countless movements for independence. But this new kind of war also brought a new kind of destruction. The Napoleonic Wars spread revolutionary ideas across Europe, but left millions dead. Napoleon Bonaparte's rise and fall showed how one man's ambition could reshape an entire continent, and how quickly the dream of freedom could turn into empire again. The Industrial Age, a new kind of warfare. By the 19th century, technology began to change the face of battle. The American Civil War was the first conflict to use railways, telegraphs, and photography, a shocking preview of the industrialized wars to come. It wasn't just about the North and South, it was about the future of humanity's conscience, about whether freedom and equality could truly coexist in a world built on exploitation. Meanwhile, in Europe, the race for colonies and power set the stage for something far greater and far more terrible. By the early 20th century, alliances had been drawn, weapons had been built, and tension was at its highest point in history. Then, in 1914, the world exploded. The Great War, the end of an era. World War I was unlike anything before it. It was the first truly global conflict, pulling nations from every continent into a storm of destruction. Trenches, machine guns, tanks, and poison gas changed warfare forever. But even more than that, it changed the way people thought about civilization itself. When soldiers came home, they found their world broken politically, economically, and emotionally. Monarchies fell, empires dissolved, and entire generations were lost. The war that was supposed to end all wars only set the stage for something far worse. The rise of totalitarianism. In the chaos that followed World War I, new ideologies took root. Communism rose in Russia, fascism and Nazism spread across Europe. Economic depression, humiliation, and fear created the perfect breeding ground for dictators. The world had survived one war, but it had learned nothing. And so, barely 20 years later, the world burned again. The Second World War, the global catastrophe. When World War II began in 1939, the world was once again divided, but this time, the stakes were higher than ever before. The war stretched from Europe to Asia, from Africa to the Pacific. It wasn't just about territory anymore, it was about ideologies, identities, and survival itself. At its heart was a battle between tyranny and freedom, darkness and light. Nazi Germany's invasion of Poland started the conflict, but soon almost every nation on Earth was involved. The Holocaust, the bombing of cities, and the rise of total war changed the moral fabric of humanity. Civilians became targets, and technology became a weapon of unimaginable power. When the atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, the world entered a new era. The war ended, but the fear it created would never fully disappear. For the first time, humans had built the power to destroy themselves. The Cold War. Ideologies in ice. The end of World War II didn't bring peace, it brought a new kind of conflict. The world was split into two camps: the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, led by the Soviet Union. Instead of direct battles, they fought through politics, propaganda, and proxy wars, smaller conflicts in other countries that reflected the larger ideological struggle. From Korea to Vietnam, from Cuba to Afghanistan, millions suffered in wars that were never officially world wars, but were global in every sense. Meanwhile, the race for nuclear weapons and space exploration symbolized a strange paradox. The same nations that feared destruction were also pushing the limits of human achievement. The Cold War wasn't only about military might, it was about information. Spies, intelligence agencies, and secret operations became central to global politics. The invisible war of espionage created myths and heroes, but it also left scars on nations for generations. The fall of empires and the birth of globalization. By the late 20th century, something remarkable happened. Colonial empires that had ruled for centuries began to collapse. Countries in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East fought for independence, often through bloody revolutions and civil wars. This wave of decolonization gave birth to dozens of new nations, each struggling to define its identity in a rapidly changing world. Yet freedom came with challenges: unstable governments, poverty, and political violence. In many cases, the scars of colonial rule never fully healed. Meanwhile, the world was becoming more connected than ever before. Trade, technology, and communication began to blur the lines between nations. Globalization promised peace through interdependence, But it also created new kinds of conflicts: economic wars, cultural clashes, and the rise of global terrorism. Modern conflicts beyond borders. In the 21st century, war looks very different. Instead of massive armies and front lines, we now see cyber attacks, information wars, and economic sanctions. Technology has turned the battlefield into a network invisible, constant, and everywhere. But while the tools have changed, the causes remain painfully familiar: power, fear, ideology, and the human desire to control. Civil wars in the Middle East, tensions in Eastern Europe, and territorial disputes in Asia remind us that peace is never permanent. It must be constantly defended. At the same time, new forms of warfare have emerged: wars for attention, wars of information, and wars of truth. Propaganda is now digital, and public opinion has become one of the most powerful weapons of all. In this new reality, every citizen is both a witness and a participant. Lessons from centuries of conflict. Looking back, it's hard to believe how much war has shaped the world we live in. Borders, languages, alliances, and even technologies we use daily were born out of conflict. But perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: humanity always rebuilds. Every time destruction comes, art, science, and hope rise from the ashes. World War II led to the creation of the United Nations. The Cold War gave us satellites, the internet, and space exploration. Even the darkest moments of history push us to find light to question what kind of world we want to live in. A fragile peace. Today, we live in an age of both peace and tension. Major global wars are rare, but local conflicts continue to erupt. Nuclear deterrence keeps nations cautious, yet fear remains just below the surface. History shows that peace is not a gift, it's a constant effort, and the wars that shaped our modern world are still shaping it, even now, through memory, diplomacy, and the silent desire of people everywhere to never repeat the past. So perhaps the true victory of humanity is not in winning wars, but in learning to live without them.